Hi, it is Midweek Extra. I am Josh Sexton, looking back on Lille and ahead to Ipswich Town at the weekend, and joining me to do so I have Ali Gunn, Mo Stewart and Rob Gutmann. We are, of course, in association with Green King Sport. Download the Green King app for 10% off drinks in any Green King pub when there is live sport on, and if you're not sure where your nearest Green King boozer is, you can also find that in the app too. Rob, I'll come to you first on Lille.
Where you want to find your nearest Green King boozer, open the curtains, it's there.
Yeah.
There's fucking millions of them.
There's
no excuse not to find your local Green King boozer.
Turn a corner.
There's a bit of promotion for the sponsor there. That's free, guys.
It's the pub expert over here, by the way.
Yeah. That one's on the house. Yeah, Rob, we'll look back on Lille. It feels a lifetime ago now because there's so much Januarying that has happened between us and the Lille game. But there's a few sort of interesting points, I think, that come from it, particularly in terms of team selection looking ahead to Ipswich. Of course, in the game he chooses to give rest from the start to Trent Konate and McAllister. Robertson and Gakpo also miss out, but that does feel a bit more like it should just be the way things are or the way they should be going forward, possibly with those two now.
Yeah, I like the idea that we rotate gradually from game to game to game. There's no treating any game as a lesser selection poser than the next. I'd even go as far as maybe talking about PSV next week and Plymouth in a few weeks, which we did an overview show yesterday. And your first instinct is those are sort of free hits, and that you can make 9 changes and you can rest the A squad, right? But me and Salmon made the point on the show yesterday without rehashing the whole thing that the one time you've sensed a dip from Liverpool that you didn't see coming is when they've had these clear 7 days or after an international break. The rhythm factor is important. And I don't know if I'm right, but my distant observation of Pep Guardiola down the years, when he was good at his job, all the years till now, was... Although he did throw some kids in for the endless ties against Wickham away in various cups, the big guns would be there, as well. There weren't the 9 changes. There would be maybe the 4 was the impression. And I think that is the way forward. I think he did it with, you were able to, I'm trying to say in short, you should be able to look at any Liverpool team against any level of opposition in a given season, and you can't tell it's not a first team, right? Okay, Mo Salah's a giveaway. Van Dijk's a giveaway if you give them the night off. But otherwise, no, I don't think so. But you're right, he has sort of signposted where the changes come for Ipswich, hasn't he? Well, how many did you list there? 5?
Yeah, so the 3 who I think you'd imagine will come back in would be Trent Konate and McAllister, and then it's like it feels a little bit
Gravenberch because he only had half a game.
Course,
so that's 4.
It feels a little bit harsh on Gakpo, I think, Mo, but like I just think like, and we'll come on to talk about it with a little bit more depth, but like the number 9 thing has been pretty clear to me for a couple of games now, like particularly in terms of the way the front 3 has functioned. I think they've functioned pretty well defensively, and that will always be the understated thing, but it looked through that sort of spell from United onwards, really. United, obviously, Salah gets the penalty, Gakpo gets the goal in that one, but from that point onwards, it looks like all 3 of them have not been great in front of goal. You hope that the Salah goal against Lille the other night is a sort of break glass in that, but really it feels to me like something needs to change in the way that starts, and by all means, find ways to go back to it at points.
Yeah, to an extent, although I do think that reading is kind of harsh on Gakpo. I think if you take away that chance against Brentford, I can't really think of any that he's missed that he should have scored. I think he's unlucky at Forest with the one the goalkeeper makes a really good save late on. And I feel like he's still effective in as much as he's still causing the opponent's problems, which is always what I like to see from him. So I would have no qualms of him coming back in at the weekend. I think that he's good to go. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets a goal or an assist in that game as well. But yeah, I think that there has been a little bit whereby it's not quite been as fresh and as slick as we've seen it previously. And for whatever reason that is, I think Diaz is probably more the reason. I think, again, we've probably spoken loads about the effectiveness he has when he's playing centrally. I get the impression now that he's probably kind of longingly looking over to that left touchline thinking, God, it was awesome when I was over there.
Do you think it's a low block thing? Because the period where he is very effective, is it Real Madrid, Leverkusen, West Ham, Tottenham? They're all teams that came to play football.
Yeah.
The minute we had United who sat in, albeit they were competitive, they sat in, Forest sit in, Brentford to an extent, the teams that really were going to put everyone behind the ball, it's harder, and you kind of feel you want this one figurehead in the middle that something can bounce off him, like a Jota or a Nunes.
And also, I think if most of the defence is sitting lower, it's harder to run in behind because there's less room to run in behind.
Yeah. And if you look at his goals, there's lots of running in behind.
Exactly.
Or beating the last man.
Yeah. So I think it's harder for him to be at his natural best in those scenarios. And now, because of what happened at Brentford, and I would say to a certain extent, Lille as well, even though he didn't get a goal, I think he could still come off the pitch, Nunes I'm talking about, feeling like he contributed and he did okay. That's something where Slot can now say, okay, well, we can use you in a position that you're intended to be, that you're more natural in, and then we can use the others in the positions they're most natural in. We've also potentially got Chiesa now, who could potentially maybe come in and do some central minutes. So it could just be back to everyone feeling a little bit more comfortable with their roles and their jobs. But on the point of rotation, I do think this is another area where Slot feels like, well, maybe he's learnt from what he's seen. And he does seem to be willing to kind of take on board the lessons that the boys are giving him on the pitch over the course of a season. And as Rob said, there was that period where he gave them everything off, and he gave them all everything off, and then they came back and they struggled. So maybe just trying to dip a foot in here and there and just keep them ticking over is probably what we're going to see from now on.
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it, Ali? Because I think you can almost quite easily fall into the thing of like, if I think the phrase we always use on the Anfield Wrap is, if the Champions League final was played tomorrow, what would your starting 11 be? And like, I look at that from the other night, and that's probably, save for Gravenberch coming in for probably Jones, and then the obvious changes in the defensive areas. That would be the front three, two of the midfielders, probably the left back at this stage that I would like starting a Champions League final. And it's some. Again, like it feels like slightly harsh on Andy Robertson in the same way it does with Cody Gakpo coming off the left wing, but like Tsimikas comes when he plays the other night and just puts in another pretty consummate performance. He looks more of a threat from set pieces than any of the other lads do in terms of his delivery. So again, feels slightly harsh, and I always feel bad saying Andy Robertson because of I just adore him. I love how much he's contributed to Liverpool. I love the grit and determination and all those brilliant things about his game. But it does feel like Tsimikas is edging ahead in that Champions League starting 11 battle at the moment.
Yeah, and I think this is probably the biggest difference between this manager and the previous manager. Under the previous manager, he would have pushed players through their little dip or their drop in confidence, whereas Slot is very aware that he can rotate and rest, and he's not afraid to drop someone of Andy Robinson's sort of credibility to go, do you know what, I think you need 3 or 4 games out, or you just need 20 minutes, still maintaining rhythm to a certain extent. But I think he's not afraid to make big decisions like that. I agree with Rob's point. He's so obsessed with rhythm that we made 4 changes on Tuesday night, and I think he actually had 7 changes in his head, which is why he does the 45-minute changes. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't like mass change. He still likes that level of confidence in the team, that level of assurity with people like Virgil van Dijk and Ryan Gravenberch. But at 45 minutes or at 60, when Szoboszlai was sort of looking a little bit leggy, and when he thought, McAllister can impact this game, he's not afraid to ring the changes because he knows I'll still get the best part of 40 minutes of Alexis McAllister, and that's just enough. That's just enough that what we need for Ipswich at the weekend when he's going to start. Now, the Andy Robertson conundrum at the minute is he's been in this dip for a little while, and I don't want to say it's a drop-off in terms of his ability, but maybe his confidence is started to dip. And I think he is afforded that luxury by Liverpool fans that I think he can get out the other side of it. I don't think his legs have gone. I don't think we're having a conversation about Andy Robertson isn't what he used to be. But again, I think he's a very different player in this system than he was for Jurgen Klopp. Mm. And that really does need to be highlighted. He is not necessarily the marauding Andy Robertson that he needs to be anymore. Mm. And sometimes because of that, and his game has changed, that maybe he's picked up areas where he goes, maybe he's not that strong, and we need a bit of Costas Tsimikas. Like you said, the set pieces, we saw at Nottingham Forest. We haven't been that prolific in set pieces this season, but we really should be with what the height we have in the team, the quality we have on the ball. But having those changes and having that luxury, I think the manager is constantly assessing how, and I've mentioned before on previous shows, he's constantly assessing how he can have the best squad for that particular game. And I echo Rob's point where there is no game any less than the next game, but he will pick the best team for what that game needs and what we can get out of it, whether it's a low block against United or Brentford. Now, again, I think the manager probably has learned from that Luis Diaz against a low block isn't necessarily the best move. However, that's not to say that we won't see Luis Diaz against a low block for the rest of the season. It just may be we need a Harvey Elliott behind him, or we need something. And that constant tinkering is a luxury, and it's a luxury of a position that we've created with such a gap and with such performances. So I'm really excited about the rotation that we're doing, because it's not for the sake of rotation. And I also think, as Mo said there as well, we have players on the bench that we know can impact and change a game. So I think it's incredibly exciting for the next couple of games and throughout the season that we seem to have this momentum building from the starting 11 to the bench to the players that aren't even getting on the bench.
Yeah, and I think you're starting to see the benefit of that in terms of rhythm as well, Rob. Jarell Quansah is someone who looks like he's particularly struggled with that lack of rhythm over the course of the season. Has looked low on confidence on the ball, which is probably the area you'd mark for the majority of last season, save for the mistake at United as being one area that he was particularly comfortable in, particularly when you compare him to the Gomez and Konate options, who probably didn't look quite as comfortable on the ball when they were coming in last season, and have looked a little bit more improved in that area this season. Obviously, him and Bradley played together against Spurs and were a little bit more targeted in that game, looked a little bit more inexperienced, but I feel like in this one you do see the benefit of them both having a little bit of rhythm recently, because they both looked much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Bradley's a very interesting case study, as you suggested. He almost makes a brilliant tackle early on against Lille, where you think he's sort of semi-replicating his Mbappe tackle, was it? And then he loses the ball, and then they break down our left. But he gets into the game. There's a couple of exciting touches going forward. He definitely needs rhythm. Quansah, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, Quansah was showing real signs of confidence, I thought, against Lille. His use of the ball is punching it in vertically into forward's feet. He's an exciting player, Jarell Quansah, and it's easy to sort of forget and dismiss what we thought we had on our hands last season.
Yep.
And I hope he doesn't get too frustrated. And I don't want him to get chances this season, quite frankly, because I want Konate fit, I want Van Dijk fit. But the same really applies for Conor Bradley. I'm not quite sure how we manage it. The problem is it's all very well saying early stages of League Cups and FA Cups, but we're sort of on the cusp of going past all those early stages. And, if you get to a semi-final of an FA Cup, fingers crossed, say... Is Brad Jones getting the nod over Brad Jones? Jesus, Conor.
I was going to say, I hope not.
Conor Bradley. Does Conor Bradley get the nod over Trent? I don't know. Maybe if you're playing 2 games a week, that sort of decision does come into play. But it is a good thing, and there are games in the immediate. If we just focus in the immediate present, you've got Plymouth on the horizon. You've got Spurs in the League Cup. So what else am I missing out? PSV as well. So there's 3 where you can go. It isn't actually a catastrophe if we lose any one of those. And if it's not a catastrophe, it's probably a good idea to keep those boys in rhythm, because if Trent pulls a hamstring like he did this time last season, was out for 8 weeks or 6 weeks, whatever it was, we're going to need them.
Yeah, and I think that's where you've seen Slot being particularly clever around the midfield as well. Mo, he ends up splitting the minutes in this one on McAllister and Gravenberch, which felt like it was a pre-programmed thing. Obviously, Jones goes off with the knock and Elliott comes in for him, and that looks like it was slightly less programmed. Yeah. But McAllister and Gravenberch getting 45 each. Like if you look back over the games that we've played now, the manager has dealt with that situation perfectly. And I think you've almost arrived in a situation where, I was stood there at half-time thinking the midfield 3 had been brilliant then, and then vice versa at full-time. I was like, the midfield 3 that came on then were brilliant. So that entire bank of 4, maybe even 5, if you want to include Elliott in those midfield options as well. Finally, we're at a point where when we weren't necessarily at this point over Christmas because a few of them looked leggy, we're now returned to that point where we're like, you could play any single one of them and we'd all be happy.
I mean, I'd almost go as far as saying 6 of them, because I think the most interesting thing about that is that Slot said that he planned to change Szoboszlai at half-time, but it was only because of Jones couldn't continue.
Oh, right, I didn't see that,
Yeah. Well, it was only because Jones couldn't continue why he changed him, but then he does change Szoboszlai not that long after and brings on Endo. And obviously we've spoken a lot about Endo and whether or not Slot really believes in him as a player. I thought the biggest compliment he could have paid him in that game was that he intended to bring him on when it was 1-0, and then it went to 1-1, and Liverpool then needed a goal, and he still brought him on. It wasn't like, okay, well, no, I'm just only going to use you to protect Leeds. It was like, no, you can go out there when we need to be front foot as well. And that would have hopefully given him a little bit more belief that he will be involved at certain times. And yeah, I agree with you. I think that if you look across all of the midfielders, that was probably the best collective performance we've seen from them for a couple of weeks. One of them here, one of them there hasn't quite been at it the whole time. But it's a tough job. I mean, it's probably not necessarily quite as relentless a job as it was under Jurgen Klopp, but it's still probably the toughest job in the game, because you really do have to be influential at both ends of the game. And playing against a team like Lille, it's not so much just about the physical, but it's the mental as well, because they were changing so much, almost kind of imperceptibly changing, just little bits here and there. So they're going between a 4-2-4 and a 4-3-3, and then at one point they wouldn't press, and at another point there were triggers that they were trying to press when the ball went out wide. And you've just got to continually be on your mettle. And they were a dangerous side if you give them opportunities, but we only gave them one. And yes, they scored it, which is slightly annoying, but the fact that we were able to keep this team who had gone on this long unbeaten run down to one chance is down to them. And yet you saw how they were able to influence at the other end. Obviously, Jones gets his assist, but I thought McAllister was fantastic as well in terms of that. Elliott, again, just the ability to manipulate space.
Yeah.
And there's been lots of talking about Elliott, and I'm sure we're going to come on and speak to him a little bit more when we talk about how he reacted to his goal. But I think the thing for me is that he is now finally getting an opportunity to show the manager what he brings that perhaps other people don't bring. And I think that ability to manipulate space, to be able to always be an option for a teammate, to find those little pockets and then to be able to turn and then advance towards them. He is the best at that we have. And that is a very, very important thing to have when you're going up against teams who want to defend against you in large numbers.
Yeah, we are going to come on to talk about Elliott more, but it's going to be in the Gutter show, which we're recording after this, because I've already seen the Gutmann's agenda, and there is a lot of Elliott chat on there. But we'll ask Ali, because Ali is not on the Gutter show that comes after this. Mo's right to say that it was really sort of, I guess, reassuring in a sense around the Harvey Elliott thing, that not only does he do the celebration, like I didn't realise in the ground that he'd done it at the time, but it was only when I went into the pub after and seeing that he'd done the sort of talking and then the cut that out kind of thing, and then obviously he does the interview after the game as well, and I only saw the quotes of that when I arrived home that night. But it is reassuring, really, and I imagine he's taken a lot from that. It was quite clear that his teammates sort of felt that idea of things as well. Like it was definitely the celebration that everybody joined in on. I think Kears was on the pitch before the ball had even gone into the back of the net. To be honest, he's the happiest fella in the entire world. It does just feel like you get your statement of intent there. Like all the transfer talk that's going on at the moment. I don't know about you, Ali, but like I sort of took it almost like reassurance around the contracts thing as well. I don't know if that's just me looking for straws to grasp at, but that was the way I kind of took it.
Yeah, I think, do you know what? I think what separates Harvey Elliott from a lot of young players such as Jarell Quansah and Conor Bradley is his level of self-confidence. I don't think I've ever watched Harvey Elliott come into the team and he's needed 2 or 3 games to get going. And we saw that on Tuesday night. He came on, and the touches, the awareness, his understanding of the game. I think an underrated quality of him is I think he assesses the game from the bench and he realises how he could impact it. Whereas in other players like Jarell Quansah, we think, right, 2 or 3 games, get him up to speed, get his confidence up. With Harvey Elliott, we don't have that. The boy is supremely confident, and I think he is an asset to this club in all facets of our gameplay. Now, unfortunately for him, he had an interesting start to the season due to injury. He also had the problem where the position that he wants to play is currently occupied by Dominic Szoboszlai, who has been pretty wonderful throughout the season so far. And I think it's probably been frustrating, but again, one thing that always impresses me is his self-confidence has never dipped, and he knows that whenever he gets an opportunity on the pitch, he can impact a game of football, whether that is through his running. I think, again, an underrated quality of him is his engine and his ability to make space for other people. He's not just a ball-playing midfielder. He understands the game, and he understands how to bring other players in, even when not having the ball at his feet. But I think he was aware that conversation always brews, especially when you have such a talent and you have someone that has impacted your football team for the last 2 or 3 years under both managers, and they're not getting minutes. But I think with this manager, he's always aware that he's got to pick a team for a game, and sometimes Harvey Elliott isn't right for that game. More often than not, I think due to just stature and size. I just don't think maybe he's picked on the basis of Dominic Szoboszlai's got 5 inches on him.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just need a bit of brute force in that midfield. But the celebration, I did enjoy the celebration, because I just think that we are constantly addicted and are watching social media and listening to news outlets on rumours that don't really have any traction or legs, but are built through just passing comments. And we can talk about the 3 contract situations all day if we want to. But with Harvey Elliott, he's always made it abundantly clear that this is his club and he wants to make a name for himself. And frankly, but with Harvey Elliott's confidence, I wouldn't be surprised if, carry on talking. Carry on talking, have a chat about me, because I'm quite enjoying it. And when I get on the pitch and I'll show you to all the other teams that I'm supposedly linked to how good I am at football. But I don't think he has any reservation that he will get opportunity. It is just patience. And again, it's something that I think we forget as a fan base, is just how young he is. He doesn't have to be Liverpool's number 1 midfielder right now. I think he wants to be that, but he is so young and has so much time and so much sort of opportunity to be nurtured that we don't need to risk him consistently. We don't need to run him into the ground. And I think he's going to be here for a long time. And as you said, I enjoyed the celebration. I enjoyed maybe the little nuanced nod to other contract scenarios and situations, but
it's a dig. I'm reading it as an outright dig at Trent. It's my club. I'm not leaving. Is it your club, Trent? You always said it was.
I mean, you're absolutely putting words in his mouth now. I think we should probably
Speaking of rumours with little to no substance.
No. He bloody well did come out and down the year. Now he might have been a younger man and he said things changed, but Trent definitely has gone on the record going, I want to captain Liverpool and be at Liverpool for life, and it's the only club I can ever see myself being at. I'm paraphrasing, but not by fucking much.
No.
So I think it was.
But one thing I would say is that Trent was actually closer to Harvey's age now when he said that, compared to where he is now.
Yes, come back in 5 years, Harvey. When you still haven't played a bloody minute.
We might be saying the same shit. It is interesting though, Rob, isn't it? Like, as I say, we'll sort of park the bulk of the Elliott chat for now, so you can subscribe to the Anfield Wrap if you do want to listen to the Guts show we've got recording after this. But like even on the point of Endo there that Mo makes, like I think I was definitely on a lot of Gutter shows with you in the summer where we were almost shipping Endo out to the highest bidder, really, because we didn't see a way in which he fitted into this Liverpool system. You know, we can talk about Andy Robertson's future. We talked about close to the top of the show there, but really the reality is, like, all these lads have contributions to make to Liverpool Football Club. Elliott has so many qualities that he can bring to Liverpool Football Club, and the pathway to minutes may be the biggest issue for Elliott, but there is there are minutes for him there. You referenced a couple of the games before. Same for someone like Endo. We don't want to see too many centre half minutes, but I think he's really impressed in the centre half minutes so far. I think he's brilliant when he comes on the other night. It's almost the nous and the experience that he shows, and I don't want to do him down with that, like I'm talking down his technical abilities, because I think there's like great technique in what he did, where he sort of saloon doors the two lads and draws the foul as well. Like he is. Like I always want to come back to the sort of like consummate and the professionalism that he displays, but I think there is a real contribution he can make to this Liverpool side, as long as he's happy to accept his role, as long as he goes, you know what, I'm at an age and an experience level where I'm not going to be able to go and get this game time elsewhere at this sort of level. I'd rather be at this sort of level, winning trophies, and if that means the odd bits of minutes here and there, the odd bit of centre half, I'm more than happy to take that risk.
Yeah, I think what you've described is the type of role we need for him and that he can fulfill. And it's a kind of we use the term a unicorn of a footballer quite a lot, but we normally mean somebody who can do things that no other footballer can do. Well, Endo isn't the best at anything particularly, but when he can focus his mind, he's very good at a lot of things, good enough. And let's put it this way: if we improved on Endo by a player who's 25-30% better, so you shipped out and I'm not saying we don't do this, by the way, but if you brought in a Zubamendi for an Endo, and Zubamendi had got Endo's minutes, Zubamendi's chatting to his agent every minute of the day going, get me the fuck out of here, right? So as you say, he's the right man in the right place at the right time, if he's okay with this. He has surprised me this season, though, to be fair. I thought he had a really good spell for us, sort of, when would I say last season? Mid-December to maybe end of Feb, and then he began to fall off a cliff. He began to look the player of the level I feared we'd bought. He was a weakness when he was facing his own goal. He was the opposite of press resistant. I think the first warning sign was against Palace, maybe, and that's a bit earlier in the season away, where they I think, do they score or have a goal disallowed? I don't think they score on the back of him being bustled out of possession. Yeah. And going into the summer, I thought, for all the good things he did, I don't want a player who's a risk like that in our engine room. And if we have to move him on, we wish him all the best, but he moves on. He stayed. He survived the cull. And he's also survived the manager clearly having no interest in giving him minutes for the first third of the season. As near as damn it, the manager really didn't want to see him near any serious first-team action. He sort of was forced into it a little bit, or put him in as just to fill up places in League Cup ties. The thing about Endo, which speaks to how good a professional he is, what a sort of a substance of a man, is he was good. And I don't think he's put a foot wrong this season. In any performance, he's not been elite, or you can go, wow, he's not put a foot wrong. And that includes, as you said, being dropped into centre-half, for the first time in his Liverpool career. So, somebody said we've still got Endo knocking around in 2 years' time, getting a handful of games a season, and he's okay with that. Because it's his life, but if he's okay with that, then I'm okay with it too, Endo.
I don't know whether or not they have Ribena in Japan, but he is very much the Japanese James Milner. Yeah. And talking back to what Rob said when he, what you thought he would get when you arrived, I hoped that that's what we were getting when he arrived. Someone who could do that job. On the pitch, for sure. Off the pitch, obviously, Milner brought plenty more to it. And I'm not sure Endo's going to necessarily have that kind of level of influence. But on the pitch, in terms of just cleaning up, doing the jobs that need to be done, that maybe no one else wants to do, that maybe no one else is aware of the needs of doing, he does it. He's always willing to position himself in the place to kind of avert the danger. And again, I think the thing that helps him, number one, his age, and he has seen it all, so he knows he's coming towards the end of his career. Number two, I don't know for sure, but I dare say the wages he's on now compared to what he's on Stuttgart is probably decent. He's not starving. Number three, he's not in fear of his place for Japan, because they're going to pick him every week because he is still their captain. So that he doesn't worry. Sometimes a younger player who would worry about not getting minutes if it's harmed his international career, it's not going to do that. And as Rob mentioned, he's got a large chance of getting some trophies and getting some winners' medals. And again, wasn't really getting them at Stuttgart. So it almost feels like the perfect storm. And as much as you would worry in a scenario where, as Rob mentioned, if he's playing week after week after week after week after week, because I think that was part of the problem with him last season, if we can use him sparingly, just like a little bit of seasoning here and there at the right points, then it's going to make us all feel a lot better.
Great closeout game player, isn't he?
You trust him.
Yeah, you've got
he's the new Matip substitution, isn't he, almost?
Yes, exactly that. You've got 5 to go, you're clinging on a bit, and you hope you wouldn't be. Just put Endo on his little wall. He gives away free kicks. He's still for me, a quarter of a yard slower than the top level Premier League players. That's why he's having to foul people quite a lot. But he's clever enough to know what he has to do.
Yeah, he's allowed to use his arse well, which I can always get behind. It's similar to McAllister in that sense. Good arse on him. Speaking of the seasoning that Mo was referencing there, though, Ali, we'll move on to some South American spice and another lad who will be happy getting his minutes at Darwin Nunes in the front line there. I thought he was bright as a button again in this game. He doesn't get the goal in the end. There's a couple of sort of moments of hard lines, I think, but again, for me, like we talked about at the top of the show, I would like to see there be a bit more rotation in terms of that forward line where we are seeing Nunes starting a few games. I feel like there's been a few of those games against low block teams again that Rob referenced before, where it looks like we're just crying out for a proper number 9. I think the problem you can cause yourself when you have somebody like Diaz playing that number 9 position against a low block is you actually allow a low block defence to be more ambitious, to push up the pitch a little bit, to squeeze you into an area. And that was the thing that I think Forest in particular did so well. Like Diaz, it felt like I didn't see his heat map from the game, but it felt like he basically spent the majority of the game in and around the centre circle, because that was exactly where Forest wanted him to be, even when Liverpool were attacking. That was how much they were able to be ambitious with that defensive line. Whereas with someone like Nunes, listen, he's going to get flagged offside a couple of times in those games if the defence is stepping up to him. That's part and parcel of the Darwin Nunes experience now, isn't it? But for what he brings in terms of being a nuisance, for being a physical presence, for just that, relentless will to run in behind, he's not bothered about coming and getting the ball short. I think there's minutes to come for him, surely.
I did have a lot of time for him tapping that ball in, being 3 yards off, and then looking at the linesman going, no, sure.
Me? Offside? No way.
I fell for it. Yeah. I thought he'd scored.
He is divisive. He is Darwin Nunes, as Darwin Nunes is, and he will constantly kettle heads and impress on every game that he plays. Now, what I think is extremely interesting, I couldn't agree more with you, is I think there's a lot of Darwin Nunes and a lot of games coming up in this season, because I saw in the first half when the ball was played by Diaz to Salah and he took that just incredible touch, Darwin Nunes actually dragged both defenders. The reason there was that chasm between the left centre-back and the left-back was because they were all interested in Darwin Nunes. And that's an underrated quality. And by no stretch do I think we have paid X amount of money for Darwin Nunes to just drag defenders around. I'd rather he kick the round thing at the back of the net a lot more. However, that is an impact in a game where we have created a high-level chance against an opposition in a high-level fixture. And I think that is an underrated quality that we shouldn't forget, because, yeah, do you know what? We're football fans and we're cynical and we're selfish and we judge Darwin Nunes by what his stats say at the end of his name. But actually, I'm becoming more, and I'm growing more content with his role this season, almost becoming a facilitator, because when he's on the pitch, we score goals. He doesn't score the goals more often than not, but he drags players around and he has such a positive impact. And we've mentioned before in so many shows, Mo Salah adores playing with him. And it's because he is fucking mental. And he will move defenders and he will occupy an interest at least 3 players at a time, if it's the 2 centre-backs and the 6, or the right back and the right centre-back. But he is of interest of any defence that we go up against. And that has to free up space for people like Mo Salah, for Luis Diaz, for Cody Gakpo, and even now into your midfield of your Dominic Szoboszlai. So I think...
Because you can't ignore him, can you, as a defender?
No. And do you know what? And that's I've heard people like on social media and on varying other podcasts say about he doesn't know what he's doing. And
I think that's nonsense, that, personally.
I couldn't disagree with it more. But the benefit of him being so lively is the defenders don't know what he's going to do, and I think that's an asset. I think that's such an underrated asset. Now, I think Darwin Nunes, and we mentioned on the show after the Brentford game, I don't think Darwin Nunes is going to go on a run now, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend to say that I hope he goes on a run. However, I do think we're going to see a lot of Darwin Nunes in a lot of games, and I'd quite like to see him, depending on how we utilise Luis Diaz, but depending on how we utilise Cody Gakpo. I think against low blocks, he takes such an interest, because you can't... In my mind, there are 2 types of facilitators at 9. You've got your Bobby Firmino and then you've got your Darwin Nunes. And Luis Diaz has tried to do a lot of dropping in, and against the low block, that is becoming more and more difficult. Whereas Darwin Nunes seems to be able to facilitate space for others by going in behind and going the other way. So I think he is mercurial. He is, as I said, he is Darwin Nunes in every part and every sense of the fucking word. But utilise him, similar to the Ouattara Endo chats, similar to the chats about Harvey Elliott, utilise him, because he is going to have a massive part between now and May. And every fan needs to understand that and get on board with that, because there is no point us being negative around him all the time, because he is going to play for Liverpool Football Club in a lot of games between now and the end of the season. And
also, Liverpool are set up to serve Mo Salah in every sense. Yes. And that goal you've described, or the non-goal, but the near Mo goal, is exactly a case in point. It's not Mo dragging 2 people out of the way. It's Darwin dragging them out of the way, and Mo, the king, arrives with his moments. But if we were set up to serving Nunes, maybe it's a different trajectory of his career. It's interesting, actually. I don't know if I'm right or wrong, but it feels to me, my memory is that the best phase that we got of Darwin last season, where he was scoring some goals, was in the period where Mo Salah was AFCON and injured. That January-February period where we won with 4 goals at Brentford, and I know Mo played half that game, at Brentford and Bournemouth, where we were beating the likes of Newcastle.
He's unlucky because he gets injured in that Brentford game as well, doesn't he? The one where he scores the brilliant goal.
Yes. There was a lot of, I think Jota was maybe playing off the right at times there, but there was a lot of, it was about Nunes. He was the guy. I think if he has to become the guy that serves the guy, then if people can get the fee out their head. Here's a parallel for you. People have often tried to sort of rehabilitate him as our Heskey to Salah's Owen. I think Dirk Kuyt might be a bit more of a parallel, albeit that Kuyt ended up playing as a wide man. But Kuyt came in as this prolific goal scorer in Holland, didn't he? Big money as well. And he didn't fulfill the prophecy of scoring goals for us. But after a while, he wanted to stay. Managers realised they could use him. Not every single game, but a lot of games. And he actually could contribute. And get some goals. And I think that if Darwin can find some humility and realise he's not going to find many billets in Europe better than being at Liverpool Football Club at this point in history. I think people are talking about him as though he's a goner in May or in June, sorry. I don't know. I'm just not convinced that that's the case yet, unless there's an obvious striker replacement out there.
Well, that's it, isn't it? It's who are you going to replace him with? And
what are you asking of that guy?
Yeah.
Yep.
And we don't know necessarily how close to the archetypal slot forward any of them have been so far, because Slot's been so good at making use of what he has. So if you gave him carte blanche to say, well, what do you really want? We might get an answer that none of us were really expecting. But yeah, it's funny you brought Dirk Kuyt, because just for the record, he didn't score as many goals in a season as Darwin did last time at any point. Just for the record. But he was very, very useful. And what the other thing he was is that when he scored goals, they always mattered.
Yeah.
It was always when we absolutely had to have a goal. Where is he? The man for the big occasion. I can hear Steve Hunter saying it a million times.
He retained the instinct even though he didn't play between the sticks.
Yeah.
He didn't start there.
So there are plenty of ways in which forwards can be effective. I think that the idea of the low block games, him being involved, I think I would love to see that as well. I think he is the best option to start. Ipswich are going to turn up with 5 defenders. They played 5 against City, even though they got pumped 6-0. They played 5 against Arsenal. And
Do they sit low? I've not watched them for a while.
Well, they're not on the edge of their own box, but it's a 5-4-1, so it's hard to call them really adventurous.
Yeah.
Compact.
Yes, compact. That's probably the best
Rely
word
on
to use.
elapsed pace.
Yeah. And it nearly worked against Arsenal, don't forget. They only lost that game 1-0. So that's where they're going to be looking at. And they beat Chelsea at home. So they have had success with that tactic. So it is going to need patience. It's going to need relentlessness. And hopefully it doesn't need 36 shots, but it might need 36 shots.
But this Darwin Nunes sort of idea now is, and I think this is, as a fan base, I'm not going to sit here and say that my patience hasn't run out with Darwin Nunes, but I am also on board with the fact that he is a far greater asset with us and in our season than he would be in selling him now.
I think
100%.
I think he needs to realise that that's the thing for me is like you mentioned there, Mo, about like, you know, he doesn't need the goal contributions necessarily. Like I think he needs to realise that as much as anybody. Like my big issue, like where I came to, because I remember sort of talking on a show, I think it was with you last week, Rob, where I was like, I do feel a bit burnt out with him now. And the reason I was burnt out is because like he's just so in his own head. And I don't think he's like a massively intelligent footballer. Like I think where him and Dirk Kuyt are very different is I think Dirk Kuyt was really, really intelligent and pretty confident in the idea that he was like, I know exactly what my role is here, which on any given day it might look like 3 different things over the course of a game. I think you know Slot has probably helped Nunes to an extent in a way that Klopp didn't by like simplifying roles in the team in general. But I think Darwin needs to now be the one who realises, because like even the interview he gave after the Brentford game, you can see that his lack of goals has impacted him. You can see the sort of, you know, almost the mental fragility there, which you can understand because he's a human being. He's not a robot, isn't he? And we, you know, one of the things we like about Darwin Nunes is, as Ali said, he's always going to be Darwin Nunes. He's not going to be a robot. But I think where I want to see more from him is almost just acknowledge that your role is not to constantly put the round thing in the rectangle thing, because trust me, the lad next year is going to do that 30 games a season if you keep playing next to him and playing well.
That's why it'll be interesting to see how he reacts to this Lille game, because I think that his defensive aspect of his game was probably the most impressive thing. Him chasing,
has been for most of the season,
chasing back players once we've lost the ball, nicking the ball back a few times, and not losing it once they've done it. And I think that's the thing. It's if he can still contribute to us keeping the pressure on at times, winning ball back, having that kind of high intense press at times, because energy-wise, he is as good as Szoboszlai, I think, in terms of being able to affect opponents and just get in their faces, but also win the ball back. And as long as he has that kind of level where he's not going too gung-ho to the point where he's going to get himself in trouble, then that's fine. But again, hopefully he can take the fact that the reaction to his performance was so positive, even though he didn't score, and say, okay, I can kind of relax a little bit and say, okay, I believe that I am contributing to this team now, and I am here, and I am going to make a difference, however long that ends up being, whether it's May, whether it's next season or whatever.
Yeah, and I think it's so important, Rob, because you need the variety of skill sets as well, and that's where I think you can bring Chiesa into the conversation too. Like he's so bright when he comes on the night. He looks so direct. He looks like a lad who can score goals as well, which is probably the element of his game that's surprised me. I wonder if he'd be the sort of lad who, is just opening up space for other people, getting assists for other people in the team. But to me, he looks direct enough that I would not be shocked if there's a pathway to him getting starts for Liverpool pretty soon. I think he needed a slow ramp up period, and that was pretty quickly in terms of the little niggling injuries that he kept getting as he was in that ramp up period. But we feel like Chiesa is starting to arrive to this party now, and Liverpool do need the variety of skill sets in that front three, and he probably out of everyone really brings the most unique one, if not just the most new one.
Yeah, I mean, you have to remind ourselves sometimes that he was a world-class performer, and it's not like he's 34, right? He's still a youngish footballer. He's got good years ahead of him if he can stay injury-free. In that context, if you view his cameos, I think there's reasons to be very excited, because I like you. I'm pleased to see that he's getting a shot away. It's always a good sign for me for a forward player that they're really, really contributing in dangerous. Get shots, but they're not. He's not having wild digs either. Was the other day? There's one where he just drops his shoulder and bends one to get cleared off the line or something like that. Is it too soon to think about starting him in the next 2 or 3 games? Maybe, but you know what? If Slot just had a mad rush of blood to the head and starting against Ipswich on the left, on the left, I'd be excited by that. You can always haul him off after 55, 60 minutes. No, it's not going to happen that soon, but PSV in the week...
I was going to say, there's games that come after that.
I think in an ideal world, you get him at least 20 against Ipswich if you can, with a view to seeing what a start looks like against PSV. I think I would hope Slot's thinking like that.
Yeah, Mo, Lille do get a goal in the game. I think it felt a bit like Spurs in the league to me, where Liverpool decide they can drop down a gear. Lille felt like they had a gear to go through, or gears to go up as they went down to 10 men. And suddenly, you find yourself conceding, and Liverpool go through the gears again to get their goal, even if they do get a little bit of a slice of luck with it. My sort of wonder with that game in general now is, can you put it in as another building block alongside the Brentford one? Did it feel like that was, again, like trajecting up from the Brentford game, or is it a bit of an outlier because it's Champions League and because there's sort of different factors around it?
No, I don't think it's an outlier for that reason. I think that I wrote that it was the first time in a while that we got the performance and the result. You could say that maybe if we hadn't scored those 2 late goals at Brentford, there's an element where Slot would probably tell us all that we performed really well and we were just unlucky. But I felt like there were parts of that game where we weren't doing what I felt like we could and should have been doing. Whereas in this performance, I felt like we, even in the periods of time where it was cagey early on, and Lille were basically trying to kind of cat and mouse us into seeing what we were going to do. We were going to see what they were going to do. I always felt like we were in control, and like you say, we had levels to go up. And it's kind of indicative of what we saw earlier in the season. The fact that it was a Chelsea game, wasn't it, in which they equalise, and then we score again pretty much 4 or 5 minutes later. And that happened quite a few times earlier on in the season. I think Wolves is another one.
Against Spurs, it happens.
Yeah. Where
you go 3-1 from 2-1, don't
yeah,
we?
exactly. And I always think that that's a good sign, because it shows that we aren't kind of knocked by their goal. We're not suddenly thinking, oh no, here we go again. We're thinking, no, okay, we can still go up a level. We can still win this game. And it was one for lots of players to get confidence individually, but I also think collectively for them all to be able to say, no, we're okay here. We don't need to worry about what everyone else is worried about, even if they were, which I doubt they were, to be honest.
Yeah. We're going to take a short break. If you are listening on audio, it's going to be just a break, and we're going to go straight back into the talking after this if you're watching on video, and I recommend that everybody does for this section, because it is a special section. It is a partnership we've done with Nivea and the football club, Liverpool Football Club, I should say, around Harry, who you may have seen in one of Nivea's recent videos, a brilliant young lad. We got to go down and film a bit of a behind the scenes with him talking about that video and all the goodness that surrounds that. So stay tuned to this if you are watching on the video. If you're listening to the audio, come over to us and watch it on the video. Come and see our lovely faces and Harry's lovely face as he gets another nice experience at Anfield.
Oh, it's cold out there, isn't it?
Oh my God.
Your shift is actually done in here, and me and you are going on a trip in that lovely stadium over there.
Oh my God.
Hello, I am Harry, a very big red.
You've got the lads here with you, a nice tour of the stadium.
Speak English.
Want to get a picture with them?
Sure, yeah. I started going to games when I was around 6 years old, and ever since I was 6, I've been a mighty red. So, on a typical match day, we go 2 hours before kick-off. So we'll drive up to the ground. Before we get in the ground, I usually get chicken and veg pie. Shout out to Home Baked. And they do fantastic pies. Everyone there is really, really nice. I'm always hyped when it comes to the games, because like no matter what, I just love the atmosphere. The atmosphere is amazing. Love jumping up and down and singing my heart out. It's fun. Lose my voice now and then.
So Harry's got a rare genetic condition called Williams syndrome, and he's also autistic, which we got the diagnosis for that later. And the way that it affects Harry is he's quite small for his age, and he has quite a lot of health conditions that come with Williams syndrome. It does have a big impact on the whole family. It's not just about the person with the condition. Even things like, I used to be a teacher, but it wasn't compatible with being a carer as well. I gave up my job to be Harry's full-time carer, but then there's so many positives as well, and I've learned so much from being the mum of someone, you know, with Williams syndrome, and I think it's helped us to kind of develop as people as well. So it's been life-changing in that way as well.
The school I was in beforehand really didn't meet my needs. They weren't really understanding what was going on with me. Then I moved school to West Kirby School and College, and since then it's changed me. They have speech and language therapy, they have occupational therapy, and they have PCT, which is fun because you get to go out. They have school trips as well, and I spend most of the days either talking to my mates or in school with my mates.
Simon! Nervous or no? I am nervous, but I gotta do it, man, I gotta do it. Top end, wonderful penalty! And then he slides to go with it.
It felt good, yeah, it felt really amazing. I'm never gonna forget that day will always stay with me.
So Harry has volunteered a few times at Home Baked, again because he loves being there, because it's like a family for him while he's there. And he's also part of the Alderhay Youth Forum. It's a set up for the kids that access Alderhay to make the patient experience more positive for them. So Harry was involved in a project to make the hospital more sensory friendly for kids who've got sensory processing difficulties. What else is in there?
Okay, so Madrid, oh my God, what a day. I get home from school and my mum and dad call me from upstairs. They tell me to sit down and they whip out this envelope and I'm like, what's going on here? I have no clue what's going on. My dad's filming me and it's tickets to the Madrid game against Tottenham, and I just completely, I was in shock.
What's that in your hand?
Yes! Yes!
What is it?
I'm going to Madrid!
I just want Harry to live as a full and as independent a life as he possibly can, and to fulfil the things that he wants to do.
I do see myself still going to Anfield a lot. I see myself probably working, having a job, probably end up having kids probably, and just overall just having a nice life.
A true cop right in front of the cop.
Thanks for the big surprise. I wasn't expecting it, and for all the stuff that you've done for me, and I'm really happy that I got the chance to experience it all.
So, Ali, Champions League first place feels all but wrapped up now for Liverpool. It's not mathematically, because Barcelona have decided to maintain being the most insane football team in the entire world, but it does feel like Liverpool have put themselves in the absolute box seat there. And to the idea that, when we got drawn with that, maybe we're just the gang of shithouses, to be honest, because I think so many people looking at it and thinking it's a group of death. So for Liverpool to go 7 wins from 7, to concede only 2 goals throughout that run as well, I think just shows how impressive this team truly are.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest compliment you can pay them, is we seem to have navigated. We've navigated the I say the lesser ties, but the ties aside from Leverkusen and Madrid with relative ease and without sort of too many threats. We've sort of kept teams at touching distance, which I think under this manager was something we had to learn or relearn, because it's a different style of play, and you have to get used to how do you manage games under a new system and under a new manager? And I think we've done that with real confidence. I think the interesting part of the format now is, and I was reading as I came in this morning, that obviously the teams we play further down the list, currently the teams who are occupying that are, they've got a bit about them with City, PSG, and I think it's Madrid currently occupying. I may be wrong on one of them.
They're not. Well, I think they're unlikely to be occupying those.
It could all shift a lot in the last game.
I think the clever money's on Juve being in that group of 4, but the others could be the likes of Brest and Monaco,
and maybe Celtic as well.
Maybe Celtic, Lille are even in the mix, I think, for it.
I think that's the interesting, exciting part about this, because the discourse on Tuesday night, and especially after last night, people were sort of panicking and think, well, there's still another game to be played here, so you're not getting too concerned at the moment. But I actually think with the statement that we've put out across Europe as well, with the mild bits of rotation, with the patterns of play, again, with the amount of third gearedness that we've managed to achieve in a couple of these games has actually been really impressive, because we've given players minutes, but we've also actually maintained a lot of rhythm in our style of play. And that will concern other teams, because you think, well, God, once they really let the shackles off, what are this team actually going to do? And we gave everyone a little taste of that against Leverkusen and against Real Madrid. And again, I think it's been a really good advertisement across the whole squad and the whole team of how we can manage each individual game, how we can manage each individual rotational player and still get the best result. So, bring it on. I think Tuesday will be, or Wednesday at PSV will be another interesting game. I see rotation. Again, I don't see maybe too much rotation. If Barca didn't get the win, I could still see that the manager still probably wants that first place on the whiteboard for Thursday morning. But I think this is a really exciting time to continue building blocks, as we just mentioned, into the last 16.
See, I think for me, the main reason why the manager wants to be top is because he wants to beat PSV. I don't think there's any difference between being first and second. I think there's literally no difference between first and second.
Apart from a little bit of money, there isn't, no.
No, like
the two benefits you get is you both of you get drawn against that middle block of 15 to 18. And
whether you're 1 or 2.
And you both get the benefit of playing your home legs a second throughout the entire knockout phase.
And so we've already secured those benefits. I mean, the extra I think it's a €250,000 for being first over second.
Is that all it is?
I think so. I really don't think it's a lot of money. I say not a lot
But I
of
agree
money
with you.
to a football club. Before anyone gets on me, I would absolutely love all of that money myself. But
They know where you live, Mike.
you just direct those funds straight to them.
yeah, straight in. I'll give you the details later. But I think the idea of going through and saying that we won all of those games is the kind of thing that can give you confidence, but it's also difficult because sometimes when you get to the knockout round, you feel like, well, that should give us more of a benefit than it has done. Because, as you said, we could still be in a situation where we've got a very tough game in the last 16. But I think if you go back and you look at those games and you think about who we beat and how we beat them, I don't think there's anyone in this competition who we should be fearful of. I think we should be able to go into a two-legged game with everyone and say, you know what, I think we're better than you. I think we're going to prove it over the course of these two games because playing the home and away bit, we haven't dealt with that yet. And so much of this Champions League has been almost like a voyage of discovery and stuff like that, and people that you don't know how you're going to deal with it. Liverpool have been in Europe a lot. They know how to deal with playing European games, whether or not you're playing the same team twice or whether you're playing them once. We have that in our DNA, and that has been proven so far. And I think that will continue into the knockout phase. One thing I will say, though, and I'll say this out now, I'm probably not going to watch our game, because there's all the games are happening at once, and it's going to be absolute carnage. And for once,
Tell you what, City Bruges is very
oh
interesting.
my God,
Bloody hell!
like City Bruges,
That's
PSG,
0-0 at half time. Jesus Christ! I'm
City
not watching
Bruges,
Liverpool then.
PSG, Stuttgart, Monaco, Inter, Celtic, Villa. These are all more interesting games than Liverpool PSV. Like, don't get me wrong.
Benfica's one, isn't it? That's quite an interesting one.
Like, don't get me wrong. I will watch it the day after. I will watch it because I have to.
Are we Wednesday? Are we definitely Wednesday?
They're all at the same time.
Yeah, they're all Wednesday. So hang on, we got Wednesday, Saturday then for Bournemouth. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's bloody close. You see, I've been thinking, you started off by mentioning the Dutch thing, and he's going to want to go back to Holland in triumph and deliver the 8th victory. I think he's going to be saying that in his head. But there's another part of him that's going, for fuck's sake, it's barely 72 hours till Bournemouth. Massive game. I think he's got to be able to say to him, we talk about rhythm all we like, contradict the first phase of this show. I think you've got to be able to say, I want at least 6 changes from the team I start with against PSV to the team I start with against Bournemouth. Because with that proximity and the travel, I know it's not far, but still.
No, I think I agree with you on is that we are now in a phase of the season where, as much as his mantra has been the most important game is the next game, this is the first time where he genuinely is starting to look beyond the game we're on and say, okay, well, I need to be able to win this game, but not compromise the next one in winning this game. And I think that if you look at the next 4, maybe even 5 fixtures, if you say from Lille, Ipswich, PSV, Bournemouth, Spurs, Plymouth, Bournemouth is by far the most important.
You missed out the Blues in that, but yes.
Oh, no, that's after, isn't it?
Everton is just after. Oh, sorry, just after.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So of those 7 games, the Bournemouth away is comfortably the hardest one to win and comfortably the most important. So you can make sure that you're at your best for there, and everywhere else you can still kind of make any kind of concessions you need to make.
Tough though, because we got 3 Dutch lads who are tearing it up, and
one of whom used to play for PSV.
Yeah, and who, like the manager, would quite like to be a big noise in Holland. But I don't want Virgil van Dijk starting.
I think they all understand there's a bigger picture, don't they? Like,
I'm sure they do.
Yeah.
It's still difficult.
I quite like the idea of giving Cody Gakpo the captain's armband, because that also means that Trent and Virgil and Salah aren't playing.
Yeah.
Maybe they all come on 75 or something like that, like a Dutch trio.
I wonder where the pecking order Cody is. That's an interesting one.
Yeah.
But I think as well, I think we've the underlying thing for me here is we've earned the right to afford those changes and still put the fear in teams to go, my God, like, do you know what, Virgil van Dijk might not travel, but Jarell Quansah and Konate may start. And that's the point I made then about we've done a lot of third gearness is actually not, I don't want that to sound patronising to any of the opposition that we've played either. However, in those games where we've been able to relax slightly more, we've still turned it on for 15 or 20. And I think any team that we put out against any of the fixtures that we have coming up, any player can have a 15 or 20. And if we need to do more than that, if we need a good 60, my God, this team can do a good 60, no matter if you're Federico Chiesa starting over Mo Salah because he needs a rest, or if you're Mo Salah. And I think we've earned that right, and that is a testament to these players and this manager.
Yeah, I think it's been a good week for the format in general, Rob. I definitely have my reservations, and obviously there's always going to be it's more games thing that hangs over this new Champions League format. But I have to be honest, we're sitting pretty at the top, and I like laughing at Manchester City, so it's hard for me to see many flaws in it.
It's enjoyable. It has been enjoyable. I don't know quite how we'd feel about it if we hadn't had the ride we'd had. I have, as we've reached the end of it though, and there's the slight contradiction for me as being, yay, we're at the top and that's prestigious. It feels nice, but it would be good if we could see that all that effort rewarded with seeing a route to the final that was a little bit easier. There should be more reward for that. And the only way I could think they could have made it better in that respect is made the draw linked to coefficients in that phase rather than where you finished. Because as the manager said, some big teams can end up a little unlucky in the draw, unlucky in one game, and suddenly a team you'd expect to be in the top 8 is hovering around the 15 mark. And lo and behold, as Ali said, there was a moment, and it might still come back, where you were looking at that group of 4 that we could now play, as including Juve, Bayern Munich, Real Madrid and Manchester City. I mean, and that was bordering on, that's insane. That's not it working well, quite frankly. Exciting, yeah. But the last 16 should not have matchups between those sides, or quite frankly, even in the qualifying phase.
I mean, we say that. I'm not sure UEFA agree. I think they
get all the drama.
I think they quite like the drama.
Yeah.
Well, fuck them. I don't like UEFA. I don't know, Mo. I think they'd rather they want Liverpool, Real Madrid in the final, right?
Yeah,
they don't
but
want them.
There are enough big teams that even if you have 2 big teams playing each other in the playoffs, there'll still be enough of them in the later stages. I don't think that you'd be at a risk of having all 4 of those that you mentioned, Bayern, Real Madrid, City and Juventus.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a world where all 4 of them don't make it to the last 16. And I think that's kind of the point. If you've got 2 of them playing each other, then that means one of them is getting through.
Yeah. Apart from Man City, hopefully.
Yeah.
But we now cannot play Man City. That's not possible.
No, I'm still holding out for a Simon Mignolet masterclass that's gonna leave him with a 0-0. Then they don't make it because they need to win.
And then you watch City and think, what am I talking about? I hope we do get them. They're crap. They're fucking awful. Jesus, we all watched it, yeah?
I didn't watch it,
I
but
did. Yeah.
The first half I thought was 2 bad teams, quite frank. I thought PSG were rubbish first half. They were the better team, but they were rubbish. But City were posing a little bit of a threat whilst not being very good. Then City come out and you go, PSG are proper crap. And then they turn into a different side.
I just thought PSG thought that they were getting a better City than they did.
Yeah.
And so they kind of played for that. And then, but also, Ousmane Dembele should not have been on the bench because when he came on, he proved that he should not have been on the bench. But
he's brilliant though.
Yeah,
he's fine. Does he? I haven't watched a lot of him in recent times. Does he still have his pace? Because he didn't get to open his legs really. He was playing in a sort of poachery role on the right. But no, he was fantastic.
Yeah, and the idea of them having him on one side and Kvaratskhelia on the other side is.
Yeah, but what about Barcolla's pace? I mean, Jesus Christ, I don't want him sitting in the middle if I'm PSG. I didn't realise he's the quickest.
Hey, save this for the gutter. These could all be potential new signings. Just the last word then before Ipswich on Saturday, Mo. The manager will be holding his press conference tomorrow, of course, now known as the Mo Stewart press conference. Unless he drops any more bombshells a la Diogo Jota one last week into that. Not expecting many surprises against Ipswich in terms of team selection. He's basically telegraphed it with his selection from the other night.
I think so. I think everybody who you'd have hoped or you'd have expected to play who didn't will play for this one. As we've already kind of covered at the top of the show, rhythm is important. So missing 2 games back to back would be a surprise. I think perhaps the only one who may not necessarily come straight back in is Andy Robertson, because you could make the argument that Tsimikas is still in the process of his rehabilitation. So maybe back-to-back starts with a view to Robertson starting in Eindhoven, and maybe he gets captain's armband. maybe you can see that world. But outside of that, no.
A couple of injury niggles at the end. Well, the Jones goes off. We don't know what's up.
Yeah, we don't know. I think...
And Luis Diaz is actually hobbling at the end, but I don't think it's much.
No, and again, so a world in which Luis Diaz is on the bench, I think, wouldn't surprise me at all. With Jones... To be honest,
what sort of injury was it? I couldn't.
He kind of overstretched, and then I think someone.
The guy sort of sat on him.
Yeah, he got his leg caught under him a little bit, and
so I thought ankle was my thing, but I don't know.
It looked like groin.
Yeah,
was it?
He was complaining. Yeah, he did on TV. He was complaining to the medical staff and holding his groin. And when you saw the slow mo, he extended his leg, and the lad just completely accidental, just fell over his leg, and he got his leg caught. Luckily, it was quite a quick movement, so it wasn't a lot of downward pressure, but I imagine it could be a groin strain, potentially.
Yeah.
And again, I think that, as we mentioned, we're in a certain phase of the season where we don't have to take risks. And we also mentioned we had 6 very good performances from midfielders in that game. So if he's in any way feeling the after effects of that, just take a risk, Curtis.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, loads to look forward to. Of course, Ipswich coming up on Saturday. Subscribe to the Anfield Wrap for more of our build-up towards that. We've got the pre-match warm-up recording tomorrow in your ears. We've got the team talk, which I'm the host of, in your face as well. So that will be a good one. A nice end to January for the Reds before a pretty chaotic February, which we've previewed on the overview show that Rob did yesterday and a little bit here as well. So nice one to Rob, nice one to Mo, nice one to Ali, nice one to you for listening and watching, Paddy for on the visuals and vibes behind me in the background here as well, and of course to our partners, Green King Sport. Exciting times to come for the Reds.